If you're planning a trip to Germany in 2026, there's a good chance the rules just changed on you, even if you didn't do anything different. Citizens of over 60 countries can still enter Germany without a traditional visa, but by late 2026, most of them will need to apply online for something called itinerary before they travel, or risk being turned away at the border. My name is Vincent, and in this video, I'm walking you through exactly how the Germany Schengen visa system works in 2026, who needs a visa, who just needs itinerary, the documents and money you need to show, and the mistakes that get applications rejected. Let's get into it. Let's start with the most basic question, because the answer depends entirely on your passport. Citizens of around 60 countries, including the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and Japan, can currently enter Germany and the rest of the Schengen area for short stays without applying for a visa in advance. But visa-free doesn't mean unrestricted. You're still bound by the 90 out of 180-day rule, and this is genuinely important to understand. That limit applies across the entire Schengen area, not per country. So if you spent 3 weeks in France and then fly to Germany, those French days count against your German allowance too. If you're from one of the roughly 100 countries that do need a visa in advance, you'll be applying for what's called a C visa, the Schengen Short Stay Visa, which also allows up to 90 days within 180, just with the paperwork done ahead of time rather than at the border. And here's the update that's actually new for 2026. Starting later this year, ETIAS, the European Travel Information and Authorization System, becomes mandatory for all those visa-exempt travelers. It's not a visa in the traditional sense, it's a lighter-weight online authorization. And importantly, it doesn't require proof of funds or accommodation the way a real visa application does. But skipping it if you're required to have one will get you denied boarding or turned away at the border, so don't assume visa-free still means paperwork-free going forward. The Schengen C visa is designed for specific short-term purposes: tourism, visiting family or friends, business trips, attending conferences or trade fairs, short study visits, medical treatment, or participating in cultural and sporting events. What it explicitly does not cover is employment. You cannot work on a Schengen visa, full stop. If your actual purpose is working or studying long-term in Germany, you need a completely different category, the National D visa, which is a longer and more involved process. One detail worth flagging: Schengen visas generally aren't extendable except in genuinely exceptional circumstances like force majeure, serious personal emergencies, or humanitarian grounds. If you think you might need more than 90 days, plan for the correct visa type from the start rather than hoping for an extension later. So what do you actually need to submit? Your passport is the foundation. It needs to be issued within the last 10 years and valid for at least 3 months beyond your planned departure from the Schengen area, with at least 2 blank pages for the visa sticker. Then comes the financial proof, and this is where a lot of applications run into trouble. German embassies require you to demonstrate you have enough money to support yourself for the entire trip, without needing to work or rely on public funds. In 2026, that threshold sits around 45 to 50 euros per day, though the exact figure can vary slightly by embassy. You can prove this through recent bank statements, typically covering the last 3 to 6 months, salary slips, or a formal sponsorship letter if someone else is covering your trip. Here's something worth knowing if someone else is financing your visit. Informal sponsorship letters generally aren't sufficient for a Schengen visa. German authorities want a formal declaration of commitment, the Verpflichtungserklärung, issued through proper channels. A casual note from a friend won't cut it. You'll also need travel health insurance with a minimum coverage of 30,000 euros, valid across the entire Schengen area, and it has to explicitly cover medical emergencies, hospitalization, and repatriation. Insurance policies that don't clearly state Schengen coverage or that have gaps are routinely rejected, so double-check the fine print before you submit anything. A few red flags that immigration officers are specifically trained to catch: a sudden large deposit into your account right before you apply, which suggests borrowed money rather than genuine savings, a bank balance that doesn't match your stated income or employment, and unexplained large withdrawals close to your application date. If your financial documentation looks inconsistent, expect questions or a rejection. Timing matters more than people expect here. You can apply for a Schengen visa as early as 6 months before your trip, but you generally must apply no later than 15 days before you're planning to travel. Applications are submitted at the German mission or an authorized visa application center covering your place of legal residence, and as a rule, you need to apply in person. Although if your fingerprints were already captured for a Schengen visa within the last 59 months, you may be able to skip that step this time around. If you're planning to visit several Schengen countries on one trip, there's a specific rule for where you apply. You apply at the consulate of the first country you're going to visit, assuming your stays are of roughly equal length across countries. Get this wrong and your application can be rejected purely on jurisdiction grounds, regardless of how strong your documents are. The visa fee itself is €90 for a standard Schengen visa, though there are fee waivers and reductions for certain categories of applicants, including some family members of EU citizens and specific groups outlined by the Federal Foreign Office. And one thing to keep in mind, this fee is generally non-refundable, whether your visa is approved, rejected, or you simply decide not to travel after paying. So there's a real cost to submitting an incomplete or weak application just to see what happens. Once you're approved, you'll get a visa sticker in your passport, and it's worth actually reading it carefully, because it tells you exactly what you're allowed to do. It'll specify whether you have a single, double, or multiple entry visa. With a single entry, if you leave the Schengen area for any reason during your trip, you cannot simply fly back in on the same visa. You'd need to apply again. A multiple entry visa lets you exit and re-enter as many times as you want, as long as the visa itself is still valid, and you haven't burned through your 90 allowed days. If your passport happens to expire before your visa does, don't panic and don't assume the visa is void. You'll need a new passport, but you should carry both the new one and the old passport containing your valid visa sticker when you travel, since border officials need to see the actual visa. So here's the real takeaway for 2026. Even if your passport lets you enter Germany without a traditional visa, the ETIAS requirement rolling out this year means visa-free now comes with its own paperwork, and skipping it isn't an option. If you do need a full Schengen visa, the process is manageable as long as your financial documentation is clean, your insurance genuinely covers the Schengen area, and you apply within the right window. If this was useful, subscribe for more visa breakdowns like this, and let me know in the comments which country's visa system you want me to cover next.